Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casmon, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. If you are enjoying this podcast and getting some great value for your investing goals, well, listen, we'd love to hear about it. Leave us some honest feedback with a rating and review. It helps us, but it also helps other listeners find this show for their own investing goals. I'm very excited for our guest today. We're going to be talking to Ashley Kehr. Whether you're a real estate rookie or a multifamily maven, your investments should help you create the lifestyle of your design. Getting clarity on that is the difference between winding up where you want to be and waking up one day completely lost. Ashley is the host of the BiggerPockets Real Estate Rookies podcast, but she's also an investor herself. In today's conversation, she talks about how she was intentional about working hard early in her investing career so she could have more free time and flexibility today. Let's welcome to the show, Ashley Kehr.
John, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Ashley, I went over your bio and your background at a very, very high level. Why don't you take a couple of minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Yeah, sure. So I actually graduated from college with a accounting and finance degree. And I was all set to become a CPA, take my exams, and I started working for an accounting firm. I had interned for them and I just couldn't wait until I went full time to get my big payday. I was finally going to be making a lot of money. And it was about a 50-cent raise per an hour, except that I would be on salary and I wouldn't be paid hourly. And all of those hours in tax season were way more than 40 hours a week. So that was my first realization where I'm not cut out to work in an office job sitting at a desk all day. And I lasted about 6 months. Then I put in my 2 weeks notice, and my husband at the time, he was a dairy farmer. And so we decided, you know what? I'll just be a stay-at-home mom. I'll get pregnant. We'll have our first baby. And so we did that. And about 2 weeks into my unemployment, I got a job offer from a childhood friend's dad saying, I just need someone to help me get organized. You can work from home. This can be part-time. I was like, okay, yeah, I might as well. And it ended up being managing a 40-unit apartment complex. And that was what Get Organized meant by him. And that was kind of my first introduction into real estate.
That is those are like three very, very different lifestyles that you kind of explored in a very short window, right? Corporate American accounting, tax season, I know is brutal. My wife she's a CPA and has that background, worked at one of the big four accounting firms. So I understand exactly what you mean there. But you went from that, coming out of college, being super gung-ho about it and going completely 180, right? And just saying, I'm just going to live on the farm and be a stay-at-home mom. Let's just have
barefoot
some babies,
and pregnant,
right?
Was the dream.
I'm just going to be barefoot and pregnant, right? So you went to that. And then you get this call from a childhood friend's father, says, hey, I need some help getting organized. It sounds like you didn't know exactly what that meant. You thought it was more maybe paperwork and administrative stuff. And then you come to find out it was actually managing a 40-unit building. So you kind of made some pretty big changes there. Can you just walk us through maybe like mentally and emotionally what was going on in your mind? Because, those aren't like, all right, hey, I'm gonna go from this accounting firm to another accounting firm or to a smaller business or to a different industry. Like those are lifestyle changes. So as you approached it, how did you psychologically kind of navigate those decisions?
I think a really big thing that helped was that my husband at the time was the breadwinner. So my income, especially the little that I was making at the accounting firm, did not make a big impact on our finances. So I think I was in a good situation to be able to make drastic changes because I wasn't the sole provider for us, or, my income wasn't detrimental to our financial stability. We lived way below our means at the time. And so that was a huge benefit, being able to make that drastic change. The second thing was this family I had grown up next to. I had known them since I was 2. So I think being very comfortable with going to work for the family was also a huge benefit, as to it wasn't just a random stranger taking on this random job, not really knowing what I was doing. It was that I knew this person for almost my whole life and going for working for them. So I think those were 2 really big factors that made me comfortable with making that transition.
And based on the fact that you were coming out of college when you made that transition to the job, I'm assuming you were, in your early to mid 20s at this point as well, right?
Yeah, I had done a 5-year dual degree program, and then I got married right after I graduated. So when I started working for this investor, it was the following April. So it had been almost a year since I had graduated by the time that happened.
And I think there's some good insights there, right? So first of all, for our younger listeners who are checking this out, you have the opportunity while you're in your 20s to explore and to make drastic changes and test something, realize it's not a fit. Don't commit the next 10 years of your life to something you don't like year one, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead and do something different. If it's a different career, if it's a different lifestyle, take those risks. The other thing that stood out to me is you mentioned living well below your means, having that partner who was the breadwinner. You could look at what you had collectively and you can take those risks. And that's about having a sound foundation. And it's one of the reasons we're big on investing passively or just building up your own investment portfolio, because the more you have assets and the more you can live below your means, the more options you have to maximize your actual life. And it's hard to do that when you've got those, golden handcuffs and you're busting your tail just to make ends meet, right? It's really hard to take on some of those risks when you can't go very long without a paycheck. So I think it's really important to set that foundation where you can. If you're a little bit older and you're deeper into your career, again, what can you cut out? How can you start to live below your means? How can you get to the point where you have flexibility financially? Because that's going to open up the doors and open up options. Let's go back to the part about working with, this family friend, this person's father who you knew very well. Because of that relationship, you felt comfortable working with him. You took on this 40 unit with no prior background or knowledge about real estate from what I'm gathering here, right? Um, what did you learn from that experience and how did that propel you to start investing yourself?
Yeah. So well, growing up, I had known that he owns a couple businesses and things like that, but I never really knew the extent. So like his background wasn't real estate. It was just like a side investment he had done. So I didn't really know a lot about that. He felt confident that because I could do the bookkeeping and the accounting for the 40 unit, that I could know how to manage it. And my first day, I walked in and there was a little tiny office in the middle of the complex. It had no windows. It had a little tiny bathroom attached to it. There was no air conditioning and there was just boxes with one-page lease agreements and a drawer full of keys. And there had been somebody who had been managing it, but it was somebody who was distancing himself from. So I really didn't have anyone to really train me or anything like that. I remember the first day I started, it was April 1st, and I was collecting the rent checks, and people would drop them off at the office where I was, or they would mail them. And I photocopied every single check that I collected because I was so nervous I was going to make a mistake collecting 40 checks within like a 2-day time period and making that deposit. And so I basically spent the next 2 years after that creating systems and processes. We took on another 40 unit apartment complex. So we were up to 80 units. And then we started to add in his commercial buildings into the portfolio mix. And so I really had to have, especially property management software in place. So it took me really 2 years. I had my first baby in that first year. And then I became pregnant 2 years later with my second baby. And I was just like, there's no way that I can work as much as I did when my first son was born. I need to have these systems in place. And I can still remember pacing around my house, calling Appfolio, Buildium, doing all of these demos, asking all these questions to make sure I had some kind of software in place so that I actually could take a little bit of leave at home and manage things without physically being there.
Wow. I mean, that's a lot of growth and obviously it shows kind of your ability to figure things out. You talked about taking over this 40 unit first day, April 1st. Haha, joke's on you, right? April Fool's
Yeah.
Day. You take over, you're collecting rents, scanning all these checks and realizing, man, this is a lot more work and way, disorganized. We got to create some systems and processes. And you were able to do that. And clearly you helped them create some confidence because he went out and bought another 40 unit and then gave you his commercial properties. At this point, like you've scaled this up, you've got some systems in place. are you effectively running a property management company at this point, or is he just kind of paying you as, a solo property manager? Or what's the arrangement there?
Yeah, so I work solely for him. We created a property management LLC to start running everything through. At first, it wasn't that. It was just I was managing each entity. So we did create, I created it for him or whatever, a property management company. We hired his one daughter to come on part time to help with some of the payables, things like that. We hired a handyman, and so we did that until 2020. And at that time is when I had started the Real Estate Rookie podcast with BiggerPockets. And I just didn't have the time anymore to do that. So we found a third party property management company. And I said, you know what, let's hand this over. Because at that point in time, I was doing everything. And that was my big mistake. I wasn't outsourcing, I wasn't using VAs. And it was just really stressful. And it was a lot of work doing those 80 units. Plus, I had 30 of my own units at that time, too. So it was very overwhelming. And so I decided at that time I was going to give my units and his units to a property management company. And so we did that, and we did that for 3 years. It was an awful experience for both of us. So, 2 years ago, I decided, okay, we're going to bring it back in house. And so I created another property management company for both of us this time. And I did it completely different, where I hired virtual assistants. We had one that would take all of the phone calls, do all of the tenant communication. I hired a full-time maintenance person this time, and it went really great. So he actually bought me out of the company at the end of this past year. And then I'm just self-managing mine again, but then he has his, and I trained someone to completely take over for me. So it took me, I wanted to be done with it in 2020, and now I'm finally done with it 5 years later. But yeah, I've learned so much, and it was a really cool experience to get to, be paid basically to learn all of these things. Because even when he had the third party property management company, I was still acting as his asset manager. So any approval, any questions, anything they had was still being run through me. And I just wanted it to be the day where I wasn't managing his properties anymore. And that day has finally come.
So I got a couple. One, let me recap what I heard you say there. So you took over managing his 80 units, or you took over the 40, added the additional 40. You at this point had acquired 30 units yourself, hired a third party management company in 2020 once you realized, hey, it's too much. I want to step back. I want to do some other things, particularly when you launched the BiggerPockets Real Estate Rookie podcast. And from there, you realized, hey, I'm still heavily involved as the asset manager. So in 2023, you actually took it back over, bringing in your own property management company, partner with him. And now you've kind of been able to work yourself out of that strategically. I want to go to your portfolio now, because you're working with him. You're obviously learning a ton. You're putting the systems and processes. Talk to us about your first investment as a real estate investor.
Yeah, so it's actually with his son. So
Hmm.
I'd grown up with him, and he was working in his dad's main business. And I just said to him one day, I said, look at what your dad is doing. Look at this stuff that he's building on the side and working on. And, I said, look at how like passive it is for him. He has someone like me that's running it all. And so he got really intrigued, and we decided to partner. He basically drained his savings account to use as the capital for our first deal. I would manage it. I found the deal, and it really helped that we had known each other for so long to kind of build that trust. He also got, firsthand view of what I was doing for his dad as far as managing the properties and stuff like that, that he could see that I was capable of doing that. And we ended up buying a small duplex in the same town as the 40-unit apartment complex. And within that first year, we ended up buying 3 duplexes together.
I love it. I think there's some great insights there, right? If I listen to your story, for our listeners, if you're looking to get started, here are a couple things that I heard you say, right? One, you've known this guy most of your life, right? So he's similar in age, I'm assuming, right? He worked
Yep.
for this guy's father. So you've known him a long, long time with a deep relationship. You saw the results his father was having and the model, having someone like you manage that on his behalf, and thought this might be a great partnership opportunity. From there, you took the lead on finding the deal. He drained his account to make the investment, but you still started small. You started with a duplex. You didn't put everything on black, right? You started with one investment in the same town where you already managed the 40 unit. So you had some market knowledge there. And from there, you went on to acquire more assets. A couple things I'll tell our listeners. One, make sure you understand who you're partnering with. If you're going to go down that path, make sure you know who you're partnering with. Build that relationship. Take the time and establish it. Maybe you don't have 25 years to establish that relationship, but make sure you get to know who it is that you're going to be in bed with, right? The second thing is make sure they can do what it is that you're asking them to do. This is one of the biggest mistakes I see people make when they partner. It's I'm new, you're new, we both like this same thing. Let's get together and see what happens, right? But none of you actually know how to do the thing. And now you get down a path and you can find that one person really doesn't want to do the thing anymore. And now one of you is stuck. And it's a huge mistake that I see so many people make. In this case, you were the one who was building the experience, right? You had that experience, you had the knowledge, maybe not 20 years, but again, you had done it here with your dad's portfolio. Quite frankly, a much more difficult investment doing a 40 unit. So going to do a duplex was probably a piece of cake compared to managing that 40 unit. So it made sense to partner. And of course, you had built his trust there. Is there any other either insight or nugget that you would think or share with our audience as you reflect back on making that first investment?
Yeah, it would be that I just didn't go and say, "Hey, do you want to invest with me?" I planted the seed of look at what your dad is doing and not even saying like we should do that and just continuously having conversations about it to kind of work up to that point instead of just like pushing it onto someone. Especially since he had never even really thought about investing in real estate. And this was kind of his first exposure to it. Even his dad's stuff that was going on, he really had no idea what that really looked like. So that would be the first thing is, work your way to that point where you're, presenting the opportunity to partner with them. But the second thing would also be is you had said is to start with something manageable. Don't bite off more than you can chew for your first deal. And then whatever you're bringing to the table, whether it's capital, whether it's your time, whether it's your knowledge, be confident about it. Be confident, show the other person how you are going to achieve this. What is your skill? Even if it is just capital and you want to come in as the money partner, but you need somebody to actually manage it, run the deal, and that's what you're trying to approach, be confident that like you're okay with risking your money. That if something happens in the deal, that you're not going to come after them. And that was one thing that my partner had said to me was like, wow, I'm giving you $72,000 right now to buy this house. Like, that is my savings. I am really, really trusting you. And I was so confident in his decision to trust me that he never actually did doubt me. And we're still partners today, too. And I've definitely made mistakes along the way, but we have maintained our relationship and we have, you know, built a successful portfolio.
I love it. I think you just nailed a couple of things, and it's great to hear you say it and to step back because I think so often we have relationships with people. You go to a networking event or whatever it is, you have a childhood friend, you want to go in business together, but you have to ask these tough questions. And I love the way you said that last part where at the end of the day, everyone's got to be confident with their decision, confident with the investment, confident with their ability to execute. And I would push not to fake this confidence. Make sure you've got resources around you, mentors, coaches, that you have some experience, that you know where to go when you have questions and challenges. Because to your point, we're all going to make mistakes. I don't care what your portfolio is. There are mistakes that you're going to make or things that you would want to redo as new information becomes available. The key is being able to surround yourself with those individuals so you can make the best decisions at that time and do the best to take care of any of your partners or investors. Ashley, you work with a lot of folks now talking on the podcast. You've interviewed a ton of individuals, particularly newer investors who are looking to get started. Everyone's not going to be able to replicate your experience, but what's one of the most common mistakes you see new investors make when they want to get into real estate?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is comparing yourself to others as to
Mm.
what kind of deals they're doing. And with social media, podcasts, that makes it so easy. You see the YouTube thumbnail that says $10,000 cash flow per month, and you think, my deal is showing me $100. It's going to take me forever to get to 10,000. Like, you have to first sit down and figure out your why. Why are you investing in real estate? Is it because you want to quit your job? Is it because you want to build up your savings? Is it because you want to pay off student loan debt? Is it because you want to have some form of retirement or extra retirement and you don't need the money right now? You have to really identify why you're investing in real estate and then kind of work backwards from there as to what strategy or what niche or what property type is actually going to help you reach that goal. So, for example, if you're somebody that loves your W 2, you're actually very comfortable in the position that you have and financially well off, then maybe you're just looking for long-term wealth where maybe you can, say you're 30, you want to retire at 45 or 50. So it's more of a long-term play for you and it's not a need for money right now and cash flow right now. So maybe you're going to look more for appreciation and maybe you don't have time to manage an Airbnb and set up your hospitality operation. So you're not going to go that route. So really identifying what you actually want out of real estate can help you set your goal because you can find really good deals if maybe cash flow isn't your primary source. And I'm not saying go out and lose money on every deal, but there are situations where you can get a little bit of cash flow, but you can buy an appreciating area. Your tenant is paying down your mortgage payment every single month. And in 5 years, 10 years, you've built up equity. So I bought a property in 2017. And right now that I bought it for 140,000. That property right now is worth 250,000. The tenants have paid down the mortgage to about 90,000. I had put a 20% down payment on that specific property. But if I ever needed to, that is a super liquid property for me that I could cash out and there is, 150 grand that I have available to me. So even if you want some kind of security or safety net of like, I have this option available to cash out of, that's also a great tool to use real estate for.
Ashley, I love that advice, right? One, know your why. What is your investing goal based on your your life goals, your time frame, and to your point, you don't want to be comparing yourself to other people. It's so easy to get caught up in that, right? They say comparison is the thief of joy, and I see it so often.
Yeah.
It's one of those things you just got to be really careful with. Don't worry about someone else's race. What are you trying to achieve? What investing strategy is going to help you get there? And learn as much as you can and make sound investment choices based off of that. So love that completely. And I hope our listeners really take that to heart. You mentioned that you in 2020, you kind of launched, or I believe that's when you came on the Bigger Pockets Real Estate Rookie podcast. Can you tell us about that experience, right? Like, how did you get involved? And tell us a little bit more about, the show and who you're focused on.
Well, it honestly started off with me stalking Brandon Turner online and Bigger Pockets. I started a real estate investing Instagram account and nobody knew that I was posting on there. I started off posting about my debt payoff, how I was doing Dave Ramsey style, paying off my student loans and our farm equipment, things like that. And it was also the same time period I started acquiring rental properties and I was sharing that. And my sole goal of this Instagram account was to be a guest on the Bigger Pockets podcast with David Green and Brandon Turner. So I actually got a DM one day from the producer and said, "Hey, we see you all over Instagram." And only because I was tagging Bigger Pockets and Brandon Turner and everything, and they would share it. So the producer started to see it and set up the interview. And I did the interview and I just remember like being so excited. I didn't tell anyone I was doing it because I was so nervous. And um, so a couple months after that happened, Bigger Pockets announced on the podcast that they were thinking of starting another show. And if you had an idea, submit your show idea here or whatever. So I created an idea about building generational wealth for your kids and talking about that. Well, I got a call from the producer and he's like, that's maybe like one episode, a great idea, but not a whole podcast series. He said, we do have this other person that submitted an idea for like new investors and, starting out for the first time without any deals. And he said, we would love to still have you audition to be a co-host. And so he said, we have another person that we'd like to pair you up with. So we went through the interview process together and it ended up getting down to 3 sets of couples. And we had to do like a mock interview and everything like that. And so this process was probably October to December. And in December is when they called and said, you know what, we'd like you and the person we paired you up with to actually launch the show. Unfortunately, it didn't work out with that first initial person they matched me up with. But even better, I have Tony now. So Tony came on about 9 months later, and he was actually in the final 6 too. So it was really cool to, see that opportunity come back around for him. And so Tony and I have been hosting it ever since the fall of 2020.
I love it. Well, congratulations on that. It's definitely a great podcast and one that I encourage everyone to check out. We'll make sure we put a link to that here. And if you love podcasts and want to figure out what some of the challenges are that folks are dealing with and maybe get some insights to help you, you definitely want to check this out. It's Real Estate Rookies podcast. We'll make sure we put a link to that. I've got to go back, Ashley, because as I'm replaying our conversation, I'm still trying to understand how you went from wanting to be barefoot and pregnant to building up this portfolio, host of this podcast. And it seems if what I'm hearing from you is you want to do more, you want to continue to grow, but maybe I am, reading too much into it. Where are you and what's next for you as far as what you want to do in your lifestyle?
Yeah, so I definitely had more ambition, I would say. Back then, I missed out a lot on my kids when they were younger. I mean, think of you're sitting, working from home, and your baby's crawling on the floor and you're trying to handle communicating with tenants and, seeing what your baby needs and stuff. It took me a long time to realize that you need to set boundaries and that it's okay for me to ask my mom to babysit for a couple hours because I can get that work done. And I had this whole mindset where I'm working from home. I should have my kids with me. They shouldn't go to a babysitter or anything like that. And that was detrimental. So, but I also thought a lot about how my mom would tell me, you're going to miss this. You're going to miss this. They're only young once. Well, now I look at it and, they're 11, 7, and 8. And it is the most fun age ever. And I have so much quality time with them. I drive them to school every morning. I pick them up most days, except for one day when I have podcasts. But other than that, I worked so hard when they were young and I don't regret that though. So I would say if you are younger and you are building your family, my kids are going to remember stuff more now than they were when they were babies. And I don't regret that at all. So I've definitely transitioned where I hustled really, really hard when they were really young. And now I just don't want to have stress. I want to be able to, do whatever I want every day with them. I want to be there for them. And I want them to know that I'm making quality time with them and doing experiences with them. So that is definitely more my priority. I had seen somebody posting on Instagram the other day that she woke up and she looked at herself as if she was 90 years old and looking back on her life. What were the things she remembered? What were the things she regretted? What were the things she wanted to do? And for me, I look at, the big investors that are doing amazing things and they have, built this massive empire. Yes, that would be so cool, but I don't have the work ethic for that. I really don't. I don't have the, capacity to be away from my kids that much to really put in that focus and that grind. And I commend people who do because they're setting their family up for so much success. But I just want enough to not feel stressed, to not be responsible. And that was a big thing of me not working for that other investor, managing his units and having him buy me out of the property management company is because I want to be able to wake up and decide, you know what, today I'm not going to do this thing and it's going to cost me $1,000, but nobody else. Nobody else. And that's my decision that I'm going to, lose $1,000 in my business today because I want to go and do this other thing. So my mindset has definitely shifted from that, Ashley, that would hustle and grind. But I do know one thing is that I cannot not be working on something. So that's where, kind of the creativeness that comes into the podcast and creating content with BiggerPockets and being able to share my experiences and all of the new experiences I'm learning to, I really like to share to kind of help others cut through that, I guess, and not have to deal with it. But the plan going forward is to, keep my portfolio small but mighty. We're going to do maybe 2 house flips this year to continue to build capital. I probably won't be in buying any long-term rentals in New York State this year. Maybe towards the end of the year, I'll look out of state, but I just not happy with the tenant landlord laws in New York anymore. So that's kind of what the future holds. And I'm also doing my first live-in flip right now too. So that's really exciting for me.
I love it, Ashley. I appreciate you sharing that. I think it goes back to what you said about making sure you understand your why. What are your goals? What is the lifestyle you're looking to create? And make sure the investing decisions and choices you make reflect that. So great points there, Ashley. Really appreciate you sharing it. If you want to learn more about Ashley or follow some of her journey, you can check her out on Instagram at Wealth from Rentals. And you can also check out our YouTube channel, Real Estate Rookie on YouTube. Right now, we're going to transition and go to our round of insights. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmoncapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmoncapital.com and click on the Mastermind button today. Ashley, give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
So the first thing that comes to mind is I bought too many properties at once because I was focused on units. I had this goal of 30 units by my 30th birthday and I missed it by like 1 month. But that was ridiculous. That was so ridiculous. And I scaled too much. I bought too many properties and I didn't have the correct systems and processes in place. And so I ended up selling a property that I'd only had for a year. We owned it in cash. So we're like, you know what? It would just be really nice to have that cash back and to be able to take some time to really put those systems and processes in place. So I sold that property and I really went into building systems. So it forced me to make that realization, which has set me up for success going.
Love it. Thank you for that. Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for our listeners.
One that I've been addicted to lately is Monarch Money. It's an app for managing your personal financial statement, your assets, your liabilities, your bank accounts, your mortgages. It's just really nice dashboard to be able to see all of it.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
That would be Hug Your Haters by Jay Baer. So it's about customer service, but basically it's how to kill someone with kindness and how to react or not react to certain comments, things like that. And I think especially when you're dealing with communicating with tenants, there's, some aspect of you as the landlord providing a customer service experience. And I think there's so many times where that kind of gets lost in being a landlord that, the tenants should pay their rent, submit their maintenance, but you don't have to provide customer service. And so I really like this book to show you that you can still be kind.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
Besides drinking an Alani every day, I would say that honestly, it's probably, actually, I don't know. I don't know that I have something that I consistently do every single day. Even drinking an Alani, I don't do that every day. I would go crazy, but yeah, I don't have anything. I would say I did follow the morning miracle for a long time, like many years ago, and tried to get into that, but I just kind of like waking up and doing whatever I want.
I gotta love that, right? It goes back to what you said on, the ambition and creating the lifestyle you want. It's like, I don't need to do all that extra stuff now. So
Yeah.
good to hear. Give me your number one insight for creating systems to scale and get the lifestyle you want.
Yeah. So the first thing, it took me a long time to hire someone because I didn't want to stop to actually train. But there's so many tools and resources to help you write out your SOPs, your standard operating procedures. There's tango.com, there's loom.com. All of these can help you write these out. So just screen record whatever you're doing. Most of them have AI built in right now where it will build out the SOP for you. Just every time you're doing one simple little task, even if it's just paying your water bill or your property taxes or onboarding a tenant, go ahead and have like the Loom play and, record your screen. You can also talk while you're doing it too to capture it.
I love it. Well, let's go in a different direction. You mentioned you're up there in the state of New York. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
That would be the Bar Bill for Buffalo chicken wings.
The Bar Bill. What city is that in?
It's in Buffalo. It's outside of Buffalo. It's actually East Aurora.
All right. Bar Bill it is. Sounds like a great place. Ashley, love talking to you. Got some really good insights. A couple things jumped out to me. One, from an early age in your, investing career, you started off coming out of school with one vision for yourself, started down that path, realized it wasn't going to work, kind of went 180, was completely focused on that until you had an opportunity come your way that felt interesting enough to try it. And that took you down a path that maybe you weren't expecting. From there, you learned how to create systems and processes to manage commercial real estate apartments with no prior experience, and being able to scale that, managing 80 units for your friend's father, building up your own portfolio of 30 units, and creating a platform where you could get into real estate. You're flipping projects and doing other things, becoming the co-host of the Real Estate Rookies podcast, but more importantly, creating the lifestyle where you have flexibility to be the kind of parent you want to be, active, present, living the lifestyle that you want for your family. And I think that's so important, is to make sure that your goals are just that, your goals. You're not chasing vanity metrics. You're not trying to do what someone else said they're doing on a podcast, but really creating a lifestyle of your design. Really great points there. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing that. Again, if you want to connect with Ashley, you can check out her Instagram account at Wealth from Rentals, or you can check out the Real Estate from Rookies podcast or show on YouTube as well. Ashley, thanks again for being a great guest and coming on Multifamily Insights. We look forward to staying in touch with you, and I hope you have a great day.